Well, everybody, WBZ reporter Kristina Rex has been covering every second of the Karen Read trial as it's been going on at the courthouse in Dedham. We're streaming it live every day on cbsboston.com, of course. So on Thursdays, we like to sort of do a catch up with Kristina about the case. Kristina, thank you for joining us once again.
Happy to.
And I did want to point out to people who are watching this just for a second that, you are one of the finest reporters in Boston. You're a law student as well. And we just wanted to acknowledge that as fascinating as this case is, sometimes I think people can lose sight when they're online or, looking at bloggers or what's going on about, they're so fascinated. Obviously, people are always fascinated by a court case because there's intrinsic drama. Mm-hmm. Or people are texting, what about this? What about the text messages? That just want to say right from the get-go that, we never lose sight of the fact that someone died here. And the dignity of a human life was lost.
Somebody who had a niece and nephew who he acted like their caretaker and who left family behind and who a lot of people loved. And I think that does get lost, not just from the attention around the case, but even in the courtroom, because we get on this string of witnesses and you're almost like hearing so much about stories outside of his actual death that it's like to bring yourself back to remember why we're here in the first place.
Right. John O'Keefe had parents, siblings, this niece and nephew who were relying on him for their lives. And so I just wanted to say that as we talk about the intricacies of the case and how fascinating it is, I know that you, as an excellent reporter, that's always in the back of your mind, and that's foremost in our minds in the reporting of this. Absolutely. So as to what happened here, week 3 in the courtroom, things really did become very emotional this week. Let's talk about what leaps to your mind first.
Okay, so I do want to clarify because you and I were talking about it. We're 3 full weeks in.
3 full weeks, yep.
We're like in week 4, but there's been a lot of days off, so the schedule's getting a little confusing.
Right. Okay.
This week, we heard a lot of interesting testimony. When you say emotional, I mean tears, yelling at times, anger, frustration. This week was really about Jen McCabe. She was on the stand for 3 calendar days.
Right.
Which I believe is the longest anybody's been on so far.
Longest witness so far. So for people just catching up, who is Jennifer McCabe?
So Jennifer McCabe is Nicole Albert, the homeowner at 34 Fairview. It's her sister. Jen McCabe was out with the crew that night, and she was friends with John O'Keefe, and she knew Karen Read, and she and her husband are the one who actually invited them back to the house that night for the after party. And so she was the person, she testified that she was the one who was kind of like looking out the window, looking out the door, waiting to see if they were going to show up, and in turn saw Karen's SUV outside, wondered why they weren't coming inside, and actually fired off a bunch of text messages to John being like, here, pull up behind me. Hello?
Are you here? What's going on?
Right. And she and her husband are the only witnesses who have testified to like openly wondering why that car outside and they're not coming in.
She also produced one of the most famous Google searches of all time in this case.
Yes. How long to die in the cold, or Haas long to die in cold. There's so forensic data was a lot at the heart of the cross-examination of Jen McCabe. The defense showed cell phone extraction records in court this week that appeared to show, according to the records, that she Googled some version of how long to die in the cold misspelled at 2:27 a.m., 6:23 and 6:24 a.m. Now, Jen testified that she did Google it at 6:23 and 6:24. She says they had just found John's body. Karen's screaming. It's really stressful. Karen says, Google hypothermia, Google how long to die in the cold. She denies ever making that 2:27 a.m. Google search.
And this is important for us to go back because I think we talked about this last week or the week before. There is some dispute about when you search something on Google on your phone, when the clock starts ticking in terms of your storage. We all think it's time-stamped moment by moment, but there's a theory that this is an inexact science, and it could go back to when she opened Google at 2:27. It defaults to that time if she left the window open the whole time and Googled it at 6:27, right? I'm not explaining that very well,
Yes,
but you'll
no,
do
you
a
are
better job.
explaining it correctly. And I think that we do expect to hear from like cell phone experts at some point to explain these competing theories. But you would think it's a perfect timestamp. So if the data shows 2:27 a.m. and then shows that that search was deleted, which it did, that's got to be an exact science. But apparently there's going to be some evidence to show that there can be a way that when you open a tab on your phone for the first time, that's what's timestamped. So she was in bed before going to bed that night, Googling a basketball team that her daughter was going to become a part of. And so that's when she opened up the internet. And so that's really one of the things that's in debate. There's one other piece of forensic evidence that I thought was really interesting, but kind of got lost in the busyness of the week. At least 6 missed calls from Jennifer McCabe to John O'Keefe's phone between 12:20 and 12:50 a.m., which is the exact time that the Commonwealth says Karen's car was outside that night. That only showed up on John O'Keefe's phone because the defense claims Jennifer McCabe deleted those calls off of her phone. She says she testified on the stand under oath, I didn't delete any calls and they were butt dials. I didn't call John O'Keefe.
It's just, we really are getting into legal territory for the first time here, where cell phones and text messages, it shows how crucial this technology is going to become as a legal matter. I always think back, imagine how different the O.J. Simpson case would have been, for instance, if cell phones had been involved. So Jen McCabe on the stand for 3 days. What else would you like people to know about her testimony?
So and this had come up in past testimony, including with her daughter, Allie, but she was the one who really put the alleged harassment campaign, as she called it, on the stand. So that became a big part of testimony. She was openly frustrated, tense during cross-examination. At times, legal experts have said she was hostile. You could feel the tension in the air. And
she would say things like if the defense attorney insinuated something with a question, she would respond and say, because your client told me to. Like she would add phrases in defense of herself in real time.
Yes, because, which it's supposed to just be yes or no, but she was qualifying a lot of her answers. That led to this conversation about harassment. And she was really frustrated. The defense attorney, when she started talking about it, tried to kind of interject and not let her. And the judge said, I'm sorry, Mr. Jackson, you opened the door. She's talking about it. We got to let her answer the question.
The judge has allowed all of this.
Yes. So she went on and on about people driving by her house, people calling and emailing her daughter's school, inappropriate pictures sent to her family, people screaming at her, calling her a cop killer. Like really, you could see how this is built up for her over time.
It's been like last week, the young woman who cried on the stand about people emailing her college. So the jury is beginning, her daughter. The jury is beginning to hear all of this, that this is one other factor in this case.
Totally. And I don't know, that could be confusing to them, The jury didn't know anything about it. They could be like, harassed. What's going on?
Right. Why are people harassing them? Was there anything that Jennifer McCabe said that you think was either exculpatory for her or damning?
For Jennifer?
Yes. That might have made the jury think, I don't know, either, wow, she's really believable, the emotion of it, or I don't know, that was kind of sketchy. Was there anything?
Forensic data and her explanation of it, saying there were multiple instances where she was shown police reports and she says, I know that that's what this report says, but that's not what I said. So she multiple times said officers got her words wrong, grand jury testimony got her words wrong, that Google search that showed in forensic data didn't happen. So I think that will weigh into her credibility when the jury thinks about her credibility, the way she kind of disputed the record.
Interesting. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We will be right back to talk more about Jennifer McCabe and what comes next in this case.
Yep.
Okay, everybody, we're back with WBZ's Kristina Rex, who is intimately aware of every aspect of what's going on in the courtroom during the Karen Read trial. We talked about the emotional testimony of Jennifer McCabe this week, but you're sitting there, you're looking at the jury, everyone, body language plays into this a lot. talk about some of the other witnesses this week and the impression they left on you.
Yeah. So there were multiple other witnesses this week. I mean, at the beginning of the week, Matt McCabe, Jennifer's husband, finished up. And then on Wednesday, we had 3 more witnesses after Jennifer McCabe finished. So it was a fast moving.
It was a lot.
Yes. And I want to point out, I got the chance, we hadn't had a lot of time to do this, but I got the chance to talk to some of our legal analysts earlier this week about how the case is going. And Jennifer Roberts, our legal analyst, said something that really stuck out to me. She said, the interesting thing about this case is that both sides are doing, meaning the attorneys are doing a great job because you hear the prosecution question a witness and you leave believing them. And then you hear cross-examination and you leave believing them.
Right.
And that's what this week felt like a game of tennis. Like, okay. Oh, no. Okay. Like, and you could see that in the jury.
It's a real mystery. Yeah.
Back, forth. So Jennifer McCabe finishes up her very, very tense cross-examination where things feel pretty hostile. And then Carrie Roberts takes the stand on the prosecution side. And a reminder, Carrie Roberts is the other woman who was with Jen and Karen that morning.
Right. So in the morning when they found John O'Keefe's body, it was Karen Reed, still pretty intoxicated, according to testimony, along with Jennifer McCabe and Carrie Roberts. They all found him in the snow at the same time.
Yes. And so what makes Carrie a little different is that she was not out with the group the night before. She enters this story that morning, and she's a longtime friend of John O'Keefe and his family. She's not someone who met them in the Canton circle. She's known him in high school, and then they reconnected in Canton later in life.
She was crying when she watched the surveillance video. Well, the police officer dash cam video of them looking, and when she described digging his head out of the snow, that was hard to listen to.
It was really hard to listen to. She described that, and the way she described it was like she's driving the car, Karen's screaming to get out of the car. She lets her out of the car and she sits back for a second, looks at Jen and says, she's crazy, because the way she sees it, Karen is screaming and flailing and running towards a pile of snow. And she's like, what is this woman doing? And then a few moments later, she realizes that pile of snow is John, and he's under inches of snow.
Think about how painful that is for his parents to sit there and listen to. And
his poor mother, she's sitting there. She always has crying, tissues. And you can tell when she just starts, we're sitting behind her. So she just starts hanging her head, and one of those moments. It's so
beyond.
Carrie Roberts to describe. She's choking up talking about seeing what he looked like and realizing it was John.
Oh my gosh, terrible. So her testimony amounted to saying what? She's a prosecution witness.
Yes. She said Karen called her that morning. Karen said he's dead. Before they looked
before they found the body, Karen assumed he's dead.
John's dead. Carrie, John's dead. She ends up getting together. She says Karen showed her the broken taillight. She was able to look at pictures of it, and she said, yep, that's what it looked like when Karen showed it to me.
So when Karen showed it to her, did she say, I think I hit him with my car?
She had been saying that, yes. And she, I don't know. And she said to Carrie, I don't remember anything from last night. We were all drinking so much.
Yeah. And am I correct? The defense did not cross-examine her?
They didn't. And that's really
telling.
It isn't really interesting. I think, the defense attorney said after court when I asked them, she didn't say anything that incriminated us. She helped us, if anything, they said. That's why. When I've spoken to some experts, they say you don't necessarily want to cross-examine a witness who is so heartbroken and so close to the victim. They didn't cross-examine.
And it's going to reinforce points that the prosecution just wants to drive home to the jury.
Right. And so Carrie Roberts was a lot shorter than we expected her to be, but
she did
open the door to the one other thing I think we should talk about, which was this idea of John O'Keefe as like a ladies' man and the potential that Karen was jealous.
That who was jealous?
That Karen was jealous.
Right. So there was this infamous trip the month before to Aruba. Explain to people why that is coming up in a courtroom.
Yes. So the month before, as in like less than a month before he died, this trip to Aruba. And so Carrie kind of introduces this idea because the prosecutor asks her, did you and John talk about his relationships? And she said, well, John dated a lot of women. And then she smirked like, oops, should I have said that? And there was this testimony that actually Jen McCabe said, but it was a quote from Carrie Roberts, that apparently at one point Carrie described Karen Reed as a babysitter with benefits. She said John had loved a previous girlfriend, but she saw Karen, in her view, as a babysitter with benefits. Then we go into this testimony about Aruba.
As in friend with benefits.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Somebody who took care of the kids.
And they kind of had a relationship.
Yes.
Okay.
So we go to Aruba now. The jury's taken to Aruba. These two sisters testify.
And a whole bunch of people went on this trip.
Like over 40 people, they said, went on this trip. Big families, timeshare, giant vacation, okay? And they're these two sisters testify to an incident where the sister who was a part of it testified that she ran into John, who she had known for a long time, in the hotel lobby. And she didn't say he was drunk, but she said he was stumbling and he was glassy-eyed. So she gave all the indications that he had been drunk. And she said, like, whoa, like, where are you going? And she gave him a hug, and then she pointed him in the direction of the bar where he said he was headed. She said she then heard a woman scream, "Who the bleep was that?" And turned around, and it's Karen, who she'd never met before. And John says, "Oh, that's Laura's little sister. Like, don't worry about it," basically. And the woman, whose name is Marietta, she says to Karen, like, "Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Marietta." And Karen said, "Go bleep yourself."
F yourself.
Yes.
And the girl said, "Well, F you right back."
Well, F you too. Yes, exactly. Because she was like,
pleasant exchange.
Woman. Right.
Yeah.
And
so
then,
this is describing a relationship that might have been a little troubled.
And we knew the prosecution was going to try to show that. So remember, this is a month before John's death, and the judge instructed the jury that they're not allowed to use this evidence as like evidence of Karen's guilt. Rather, it could just be evidence of potential motive or her state of mind.
Right.
And so, it was really like the jealous girlfriend story. And it came off like, oh, this interaction kind of made them leave the vacation a little sour.
Interesting. Okay. So now that we're wrapping up for this week, next week is going to be interesting because there's only one full day of testimony, correct?
Correct. So
because of Memorial Day?
Yes. From the time you and I are talking, there's only 2 days in the next week. So there's a long day where we expect Brian Higgins to testify. He's the ATF agent who was at the party.
Very important.
Very important because he's one of those people that the defense has kind of pointed the finger towards. And there's some rumblings that he might have had a flirtatious relationship with Karen Reed.
Right. Another factor in where their relationship stood.
Exactly.
And someone who might have had a motive to have a grudge against John O'Keefe.
Okay. Exactly. So that's what the defense wants to show. It's going to be really interesting to hear from Brian. The judge, she wants the attorneys to try and get it done in a day. They said, we'll do our best. So we expect all Brian Higgins. And then next week, just one day, just Tuesday is a full day and that's it.
Do we know who that's going to be?
We do not.
So Brian Higgins is Friday.
And you know who we're still waiting to hear from? Trooper Michael Proctor has not taken the stand yet.
The lead investigator.
The lead investigator who is also at the heart of allegations of a bad investigation.
Red Solo cups collecting evidence.
Yes,
issues like this.
Yes, issues like that. So Canton police did the Red Solo cups, but then he took them. He's the one who conducted the interviews. He allegedly had this longtime friendship with the Albert family. Potential conflict of interest.
Which, correct me if I'm wrong, was never disclosed, or when was that disclosed?
Like very recently.
Only recently, after he had been part of the investigation.
Correct.
All right. So we've got a lot, Kristina, and we appreciate all of your observations from in the courtroom. One last thought on the vibes, the body language.
Yep.
Any way you're leaning, anything you're observing?
This jury is so good. I have to give them credit. I mean, they are taking diligent notes. Their eyes are either on their notebooks, the attorney asking the questions, or the witness, and that's it. I haven't seen one juror, other than maybe when like some testimony has gone on too long, we'll get heads in our hands.
Sure.
But they're not looking at the audience. They're not looking at anybody but what they're supposed to be looking at. They seem super focused.
People might get fatigued, but I'm always impressed that when Americans are placed on a jury, they really do grasp the seriousness of what they are undertaking. And the level of responsibility must be really sobering. So We know they're really paying attention, and you are doing a fantastic job. WBZ's Kristina Rex, thanks so much, and we'll talk next week after the short week.
Great.
Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. Thanks.
Thank you.